Sorry, my camera wasn't on. I thought it was on, but I'm gonna start over. So, I had some scattered thoughts about tolerance that I wanted to kind of get into today a little bit. Um, just a little write up that I did, and I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts about this. If anybody sees this or listens to it. So, here it goes. Tolerance. Should we be tolerant of others? Tolerance is defined by Google as the willingness to accept or endure behaviors, beliefs, or conditions that you may disagree with or find unpleasant. However, Google defines tolerance in a social context as the practice of respecting and allowing the freedom of others whose opinions, beliefs, or lifestyles differ from your own, which is mainly what's being talked about when people say tolerance of others. So it is known that accepting your circumstances and the things and people around you exactly as they are is a path to wider happiness. You can see this in a lot of Eastern religion practices and even the mystical traditions of Christianity and other things like that. Acceptance of your surroundings and mindfulness and things like that you may have heard about. Just in general, accepting. Uh, However, is tolerating or allowing the freedom of others whose opinions, beliefs, or lifestyles differing from your own, is that also a path to wider happiness? I would say that it could be, with the obvious exception being if those opinions, beliefs, or lifestyles harm you in some way. Because of this exception, I take issue with the primarily leftist movement of all things tolerance. Um, Not that I take issue with it necessarily, but you'll see what I mean in a second here. Uh, Acceptance, yes, we should be willing to accept things as they are and make sure we are seaworthy and in practice enough to be a good judge of what things actually are, or at least have good mentors who we can look to tell us these things. However, tolerant, in some sense, it would seem prudent to tolerate exactly what you can, no more, no less, because you are a being of nature and have limits to what you can take in and do. But that begs the question, what if you want to increase your tolerance for fun's sake or the simple joy of completing a goal? What if you have some other entirely different goal? All of a sudden, you are asking others to accept you as you try to attain something that could be construed as frivolous. I think that's where tolerance is born. It's a slightly less acute version of acceptance that has its place in allowing for wiggle room within a social structure, but it does fall short of the ideal and has inherent flaws because of this. I think you can draw from this that although the push for tolerance is interesting and at times helpful, it alone cannot accomplish its desired outcomes. For that, we will need a mix of tolerance and acceptance and a whole lot of patience. So yeah, that was my little spiel about tolerance today. As I was kind of thinking about that, uh, I guess it just seems like um, life in general, when you're trying to, you know, uh, increase the love, is often a balancing act of different things that we have to do. And I don't think it's a one size fits all kind of um, slogan that we can stamp on something as much as we would like to. I think it requires conversations, it requires action, and hopefully this video reaches somebody, or maybe it just got me thinking enough to reach out to somebody and kind of be a little more accepting of my own limitations, as well as willing to utilize that tool of tolerance when it's appropriate and necessary. Because, like I have kind of been pointing to, tolerance is not necessarily the ideal, but rather should be utilized as a tool. Acceptance would be the ideal, which has its own problems because, of course, an ideal is something that you never necessarily have complete assurance that you're going to reach. So, yeah, it can be good to increase your tolerance, but just being kind of aware of all these things. And there's actually a whole lot more to talk about than even just this, but that's just kind of what I wanted to get out there this morning. Hope you enjoyed it.